Welcome back to the session. Let's now implement some dates in our application and let's take a demo of our application. Let's see login here. And here we have the date first here logged in date, and then also in all of these all movements also we have the dates. So each of them here besides the deposit and the value itself like we have it now, and we also now need the date here, and so that's the reason why in our account object we actually now here the movements dates. It's so that we can display them here. But let's start with our very first date, and actually the very first thing that we have to do is to basically fake it. The That's why we logged in. So let me do that here. Fake always logged in. And so this way we don't have to always log in each time. So let's see that the current account to account 1. Then let's call update UI with that current account. And also we need to make the user interface visible with this here. So these three lines will not make it so that Jonas is automatically logged in, except for the message. But that doesn't really matter. So as I was saying, let's start by displaying the current balance here. So as I was saying, let's now create this date and let's check out the class name. So that's always a little bit hidden. So here it's the class date. So see that, and that is already selected in label date. And once more, let's start by setting the state outside here of any callback function. So that's you see that, and we can implement our code. So anyway, let's start by creating the current date, that is simply by doing a new date. So that is basically right now here we don't just want to print that. So let's see how that would like label date. So as I have already selected which gain is the element with this class of date, and let's see it now. So this result here is not exactly what we want. Then instead we really only want the day, month and year. I want to display it in the format. So I want day, then month and then year. And so this is how we display it in Europe, or at least in Portugal, where I am located. And of course, you can format it any way that you want. For example, how it looks like in your country. So we will learn about something called internationalization, which sounds very complicated, but it will allow us to form a date and time according to the user's location. So if the user was in Portugal, then the date would automatically be formatted this way. But if the user was, for example, in the US or India or wherever, then the date would be formatted in the way usually formatted in that country. So to do this, we need to get the day, month and year. So let's create variables for each of them. So right, we take now and then we call the get date method. As we see in the last video, then let's take the month, which is now dot get month. And remember that this one is zero based. So here I am going to add one here, and then the year, which is now dot get full year. And actually let's also get the hour and the minute. We can display that as well. So get hours and const the minutes, get minutes. And now that we have that, all you have to do is to build a nice string with that. So that's the day, the month or the year. And then I want a comma and the hour and also the minute. And now see here, it looked like somewhat better. But wherever the month and the year is only one digit here, then we usually write 08 on 02 like that. We basically we pad this number here with the 0 on the left. So let's do that with the day, with the month So for this method, we can study it earlier on the day and on the month. We want to use pad start. And so actually this needs to be in string now. So let's make it template literal. So basically this is now a string. So on that string, we can call pad start. And then we want this always to be 2 characters long. And we want to pad it with a 0. And probably just writing 0 would work just the same. And so we get 0 2 now. And if today would be, let's say 12, then that 0 should not be added. Because the final length that we are looking for is always 2. And the same for the month. Let's copy it here. And now see here, it looks perfect. And now let's move to the actually use the dates here on the moments. So just keep in mind that of course as the time goes on, this value here is not going to change. So this is a static. If we wanted to keep this playing the actual time, we would need something called a timer, which is something that we will do by the end of the lecture. We will not do it for this because we will implement it a timer. Maybe you see that counting down here logout timer, and so this is here going to stay static, but this is not a big deal here. But anyway, let's go to the function which displays these movements. So display movements here. And so now besides the movements, we also want to display the times of these movements. But now we can actually have a problem because into this function we are only passing the movements array itself. So however, we also want the movements dates. And so the best thing to do is to simply pass in the entire account into this function. So just like we already have into these two, where we already passed the entire account, let's do that here, just the account, and then here we need to add account dot movement. And here account dot movements, and finally where we call this function, we then need to pass in also the entire account, and so that's here in display UI function. So it is a good thing that we have this refactored function that we created in the last section, where we call this all of these methods here only in one place. And now you see only need to change calling this display movements function here in one place. So that is a whole goal of refactoring. It's making it easier to implement new features on time moves. So now alright, let's see how could we do that. So we are looping over the movements, so that this array that would compute here, which is whether the sorted movements or simply the movements themselves. So we are looping over this, and in each iteration we are generating this HTML. And so now we simply need to add one more element here to this HTML, which is going to contain the date. So let's do that in our HTML. We can see that there is the element here called movements date. So let's copy that one and then paste here. And after that, let's actually create a variable and then put that variable right here. So let's call it display date. So now where the date actually coming from, we already know that it is the accounts.movement dates. So we are looping over the movement. So at this time, basically we also need to loop over the movement's date. But that's not a problem because we already have the index. So what we can do is to write account or account.movements dates. And then we take it at position I. So that is the current index in the moments array, and the same index is going to point to the equivalent date in this moments date array. So this is a common technique of looping over to arrays at the same time. We called it for each method on one of them. So that's the moments, and then we use the current index to also get the data from some other array. So let's do that at the same position because we are using the same index. So let's create a new date out of this, because as we saw before, this is going to be a nicely formatted time string. So we can use that string to create a new date object, and then we need that object so that then from there we can call our usual methods to get the date and month and year. So that's the reason why we need to convert these string back into a JavaScript object, because only then we can actually work with the data. And now let's actually create the same variables that we already have here. So there is no need to repeat it all. Let's actually get all of this and then delete that we don't want. So to make this little bit faster, so we don't need this hour and the minute. So we don't need this. Let's remove, and we want to create this variable called display date. So the date that we ultimately going use here, display date, and now here we need to change from now to date like this. So we see it already worked. So let's compare it actually here with the dates. So in July 12, 2020, here see that works. So here we have 11, which for some reason there is also 12, but I guess that is because we are close to mid. So probably it changes over to the next day. So that is 27th of May. And so that's also what we have here in the last one, that is 18th of November. So 2019. So this is accurate. Now when we click here on the SWOT, it's probably not going to work. So we get some kind of error. See that? So cannot read property slice of undefined. So let's see what is this. So that is a weird because accounts.movement here is clearly defined. So it shouldn't be undefined. Let's set this here to true by default. And so well, now it is sorted. So very weird that we get this bug. As we click here, that's just locked to the console. But indeed this one here will be and not defined. Actually now it's undefined. See here. So we get account.movements is undefined. Now that's weird, but I guess that was something with, in fact, we faked our log here. So never mind, let's take a look at this later. So let's just not sort for now until we are back. So having our application normal, actually let's take this code out and put it into the code that is executed. So when we log in, besides this welcome message, and then also want to create the current date. So it's back to the original now. See here, it is now back to the original. So now log in, and then we get the message here and enter correct date. But now I wish I wanted to show you is what happens when we request a loan. You see that we get this error. That's because this movement doesn't have any date, right? So that's why we get not a number in all three values. So we need to fix that. Essentially, whenever there is new transfer or loan, we don't not only push the value into the movements array, but also into the movements dates also. So let's actually see that in the code. That's account 1. So we see that the movements has now 9 elements. So while the dates only has 8, so we need to fix that. Let's come here to the transfer. And then besides doing the transfer and updating the UI, we also need to add transfer date, but that's easy enough. And then simply create the current date. So new date, and that's it. Simply create the current date, and so new date, and that's it. So JavaScript will then automatically convert this date here into a nicely formatted string. So now the same here also for the receiver, because the receiver also gets a new movement. Okay, and so we need a new date for that movement. So as I told you in the last section at the beginning of the project in the real world, we could probably have to object for each of the movement. So that object would then contain the amount, date, and some other information. But I don't want to restructure the entire application, and we need to separate the moments, dates. Now let's just take here look and then add to this loan. So now that's right, add loan date, and that should be here. Just to make sure, let's log in again. And now I am going to request this loan. And now we get the current date. And August 2nd. Here we have it up here. So let's see now D account. Account 1. So take a look at the moments dates. So see, this is the one, or actually this is the one that I just added. So this looks a little bit different from these ones because actually it is really the object itself. So that's not a good. Let's instead use the to ISO a string right here on the date and do the same also up here. Okay, now let's see if that fixes it then. So probably there was some error here because we are back to having not a number. And actually I need to take a look at account 1 now again. So let's check out the latest date. Once again, let's check the date. Here I didn't call the method. So this is something that happens to me quite frequently with these date methods because we don't have to pass anything here. So there is tendency to forget that even we need to call the method. So don't make this same mistake. All right, now it works indeed. So let's check if the string looks like with the same format of all others. And now with this, we finished one more lecture. So here I am actually seeing something weird. So it is here this 19.1 and this could be a kind of 0.1. We also need to some padding and that is at this time we can see this. Now let's go ahead and fix that right here in the login callback. So that's here. And so essentially that we just need to take this, add this part here, hour and the minute. So we make all of them a template literal again. So let's see. And one more time to see the effect, reload, login. And now we see that it is now beautiful. It is working. So this is all about the session. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.